In the first half of the 20th century, professional sports went from being treated as a luxury for only the rich to enjoy to one of the most common forms of entertainment for the American people, whether that was attending games in person or listening on the radio. With the end of World War II and the economy thriving, up until the Great Depression in 1929, of course, many Americans chose pro sports to be their prime form of entertainment. Many consider the 20s to be the golden age of pro sports, with athletes like Babe Ruth of baseball and Jack Dempsey of boxing, for example, being idolized in American society for their never-before-seen athleticism and skill in their respective sports. Most Americans could only have dreamt of being in their position. However, unbeknownst to most, professional athletes were treated like property, with very little rights for how much work they put in to perfecting their craft at the highest level. They received no rights to healthcare benefits or pensions, and had to live up to unbelievable expectations and standards from tyrannical bosses. This left them with very little ability to negotiate their own contracts. Franchise owners would take advantage of the extraordinary revenue their athletes were bringing in and would use it for expanding stadiums for more capacity, expanding broadcasting, and in many cases, just for their own personal benefit. All these expenses came out of the budget that should have been used to pay their athletes for the hard work they put in to get to their position, as none of their respective franchise owners would make any money without them anyway. One of the first athletes to stand out among others in their ability to obtain a contract that reflected their efforts as a pro was a running back out of the University of Illinois named Harold Grange, or better known as Red Grange. When he announced he was dropping out of college to join the Chicago Bears in 1925, everyone was shocked that he'd give up his education to play in professional football. The average player made about $150 per game in the Professional Football League at the time, which was not nearly enough for sacrificing your education for. Additionally, college football was significantly more popular than the newly formed NFL, which was called the American Professional Football Association at the time. So what was his plan? Grange had an agent named Charles Pyle, who was a natural-born businessman. He gave Grange the advice on advertising himself as a moneymaker for the NFL, and not the other way around. Grange was already extremely popularized in national newspapers due to his collegiate performances, which made his entrance to professional football a highly anticipated event nationally. This, alongside Pyle's negotiation skills, earned Grange a staggering $100,000 contract for his rookie season. He achieved this in large part due to him garnering much of the ticket revenue sales for himself and his agent. Charles Pyle's skills as an agent made it obvious to the rest of the sports world that having an agent as an athlete was necessary, thus creating the standard of the sports agent. While this was a major development in the rights of professional athletes to negotiate their contracts, many still couldn't achieve what they felt they deserved. Professional athletes were still signed to permanent contracts in which they had no control over conditions, were significantly overtrained, and many even had to purchase their own equipment, while still already on a very low salary. They needed a solution that would protect their rights and give them a safeguard that could ensure that they were heard. So what did they do? They incorporated labor unions into pro sports. But what are labor unions exactly? Labor unions are organized associations of employees or workers from a specific company or field that are formed in order to protect their rights and interests from unfair employers. They were first practiced in the late 19th century as the Knights of Labor emerged, but were soon followed up by the American Federation of Labor, led by a man named Samuel Gompers up until his death in 1924. It was meant to be a loose formation of many smaller labor unions, and would coordinate and support many strikes. They were the strongest union nationally, and greatly benefited from FDR's New Deal in 1930, as they began to become more officially recognized. However, it wasn't until 1935, when the Wagner Act by Senator Rob Wagner was officially signed by President Roosevelt, that labor unions became officially recognized and respected by law. Thanks to the Wagner Act, professional sports players finally had a chance to stand up to their franchise owners and fight for their rights and what they felt they deserved. This was first put into practice in 1954, when NBA legend and star Celtics point guard Bob Cousy and his agent Joe Sherry contacted many tenured basketball players from around the league by mail. They asked for support in confronting NBA president Maurice Podoloff and received large amounts of it. The players asked for basic improvements, such as being paid for promotional activities, moving expenses being covered for traded players, a limit of 20 exhibition games per season, and a few others. The NBA refused to acknowledge them as a union until Cousy approached the American Federation of Labor and threatened to strike. It was then that the National Basketball Players Association became the first players' union in pro sports to be officially recognized. After the formation of the National Basketball Players Association, the other three major American sports joined in. The National Football League Players Association was formed soon after in 1956, with the help of notable names such as Don Shula, Frank Gifford, and Sam Huff. The Major League Baseball Players Association was later founded in 1966, and the National Hockey Players Association in 1967. The Wagner Act and Bob Cousy's actions ended up paving the way for players across all leagues to achieve the rights they deserve.